let me officially introduce, please, the writer, James Woolf, the director, Katherine Reilly, and our two wonderful actors, Joe and Sam, otherwise known as Phoebe Marshall and Kieran D. And in the audience, hands up please, Edmund Jolliffe, the composer, who also is referenced in the play. So if you want to come and join us, bring a chair. And can we have a round of applause? Thank you. Did I forget anybody?
No, that's perfect.
Awesome. Good. So let me then start, if I may, with James. There's so many things I want to tackle in this beautiful play. But before we get to the interesting discussions around form and verse and everything, I want to talk about subject matter. Because I did see Empty and Angel, as others did. It's referenced in the play. It was a fascinating solo show, inspired by a real-life legal battle. This is very different, so different from that. What was your inspiration for tackling this relationship between millennials, Joe and Sam?
Okay, so I started writing it from just, I was a bit worried about the future on behalf of my daughters actually, who are 20 and 18, and I was just sort of thinking about the world that they're inheriting, and that. So I started the play with the telephone conversation, and I sort of wrote it as a one-off scene, and then when I finished it I thought, well, maybe I'll just expand this into a whole play that tells the whole story of their relationship, not just after they've slept together and she's trying to get out of seeing him again. So I then sort of extended it backwards in time and worked out how they met and stuff. But it started from a serious place, but I quickly realised I wanted to tell the story as a kind of rom-com, but a quirky one. So yeah, that was the start.
Do you think, and then I'm going to bring the others in on this, we are not the millennial generation, you and I think we can say that. I think they all know that. But do you think millennials do think differently about these big issues than other generations? Is it a unique perspective?
I don't think they necessarily think differently, but I think they maybe handle their feelings in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my biggest fears was that I'm obviously not a millennial, so was I putting the kind of right words into that generation's mouths, as it were?
Yeah.
That was a fear, but I'm hoping I got it roughly okay.
I wish I sounded as bright when I was a millennial, let alone my own age. But did you try it out on your daughters?
Not really, to be honest.
Not the sex scenes in particular.
No, I mean, I had a couple of like read-throughs with actors and stuff, which there were some younger people there.
Yeah.
But when we auditioned for the male role, we had a lot of people saying things like, "You've written my life" and stuff. So that was really heartwarming and good to hear.
Well, my friend who's next to me and is more of the age of the characters was laughing hysterically throughout. lots of recognition there. So before I bring you guys in, Katherine, you worked with James, as I mentioned, on Empty and Angel. What did you think when he brought this to you?
Well, I mean, I loved the writing, but I did think, how on earth am I meant to stage that? You've got jogging and yoga and sex, and there's just so much going on. How to keep that story of the relationship and the journey, and keep that real truthfulness with it being, breaking the fourth wall and all the stage directions and all the rest. So the stage directions did come later as being the character speaking them. But yeah, I just loved the writing. I thought it was so interesting to have a contemporary play in verse.
Yes. Okay, we're going to come back to the verse. Let's still talk about millennials and angst. Does it speak to you guys as your generation?
Yeah, I mean, I think we actually, was it earlier today we were talking about, or maybe yesterday, we are we're both the same age, we're the last year of millennials. So the year below us at school was their Gen Z. And so we were discussing, does this speak to us? And I think it totally does.
Yeah.
Like, I know lots of my friends who have this feeling of being overwhelmed by news or the climate or things like that, like Joe's character is in the phone call. So I think definitely I have friends who've who've been in similar situations. I don't know that they've ever used them to get out of seeing someone again. That feels quite harsh. But yeah, definitely I know people who feel like that.
Yeah, and it can be really overwhelming as well, because millennials are sort of a generation that's grown up with social media in a way that other generations haven't before them.
Mm-hmm.
And social media is so all-consuming, and you constantly just have the news and all this information coming at you all the time.
Mm.
So it can feel overwhelming, and yeah, definitely felt that.
Yeah. Okay, let's come back to the form then. Rhyming couplets. So again, in Empty and Angel, you had a little bit of this, and this you've just gone whole hog. The whole play, you're going to make the whole. That's a big thing to take on. That wasn't daunting at all for you?
Well, yeah, it was a little bit daunting, but some of my favourite plays I've ever seen have been in rhyming couplets,
Yeah.
like The Misanthrope and some of Stephen Burkoff's plays. So, and it in a curious way, it makes it quite easy to write, because you know you've got 10 syllables and then the end of the rhyme, the end of the line in the rhyme, but also you can just go into the next line, so that the rhymes get buried in the middle of sentences and stuff, and I just try to write it as naturalistically as possible. I didn't try and write it as poetry, but just as people speak, because I knew that's how I wanted it to be said.
And it is incredibly natural. I mean, you forget that it's poetry a lot of the time. It just feels very authentic. But just talk me a little bit through the process of actually writing in rhyming couplets. Do you write like are there lots of lines that you have to come back to because you think, I have no idea what to rhyme that with? Let me come back to that in 10 pages time.
No, it doesn't usually work like that. But there's constant refinement. So you know, I obviously cut loads of stuff out that I just didn't like, or changed rhymes around. But I never left a line unfinished, but I just kept writing and just kept going back over it, really. But it is time consuming for sure.
How long did it take you to write?
Well, I mean, not as long as you would think. So the first draft was about 3 or 4 weeks, I think. But then I modified it a bit. Then the last 3 scenes that I wrote were in January, and they're the 3 in a row. They're the baby scene, the drinking scene, and the crossword scene. I wrote specifically for this production.
They're such fun scenes. So Katherine, Phoebe, Kieran, how do you direct and perform in verse and make it feel so natural?
I think that was mainly down to when we first got the script. There was a note on the first page that said that James specified he didn't want it to be performed, not hitting the rhyme every time. So just reading it for the first time, you already knew that he wanted it to be quite fluent. And then I would say mainly just Kat's direction, telling us occasionally when to hit that rhyme, but then also when to bury it and when to not hit it. So yeah, all in the writing and the direction, I would say.
Not us.
How do you make that decision, Kat? Which ones to hit and which not to?
Well, it seems quite contrasting that a lot of the long speeches, the end rhyme is full stops at the end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
So those rhymes really punch a lot more, whereas the dialogue, the back and forth, much easier to be naturalistic, and I wanted it to be about the relationship. But it makes sense that when people are ranting or getting on their high horse, that it's a different way of speaking.
Very heightened, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I allowed it to be heightened during those sections.
Yeah.
And it was already in the writing. But then these 2 fantastic performers just did talk to each other.
Yeah.
And also one of the lovely things about the writing, some of my favourite parts was actually quite a lot of really subtle internal rhymes. So you hear a rhyme and it's not actually the end of the line. It's sort of...
I liked, there was some that I wrote several down, but my favourite seems on the nose, rhyming Putin with Disputin. But did you guys have any favourites?
I like your budgie called Daniel, because it just comes out of nowhere, It's like, what is it, you can't commit to a Cocker Spaniel, you should live with a budgie called Daniel.
But we did play with that of being a sort of foreshadowing of when she's pissed. She plucks this bullshit out of the air,
Yeah.
Yeah.
off the top of her head. What am I going to say?
Oh my gosh, your drunk scene is fantastic.
It is genuinely my favourite scene as well. Which I get to say in the play.
And she's actually drunk as well.
Yeah.
So-
What's in that bottle? Coming back to the spaniel, that is very cruel to name a spaniel Farage. That's all. Okay, finally, sorry, I've been delaying the audience questions. In the back there, please.
You almost answered the question now. I was very privileged to hear James's have a read through of the play, which was really, really nice. And now it's all expanded. You've got these extra 3 scenes in it. It was great. And I was just wondering the process that why did you do that? And you know, what was the motivation for those extra scenes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
I mean, one of the extra things was the actors reading the stage directions and all the kind of bickering and arguing over whether they should do that, and that's because I'd put a couple of stage directions in the initial one, and then not really gone anywhere with it. But when I heard it read, like she takes a deep breath, swallows, then pauses, was one in the original text, and I thought it would be nice to actually have all the stage directions read by the actors, because it's another kind of knocking down the fourth wall device, and
Also,
I do
otherwise we
like
talk about
those.
maybe like, what is it going to be, old-fashioned cinema cue cards, or because it's quite
Yeah.
important to know. It's a week later. She goes, "Oh, just friends. It's the following day at the back of bed." You know, so those sort of details are quite important information.
I
Yeah.
I
They're
thought
not
all of
just
that
stage
worked
actors,
so well too, all that, the Brechtian business of it, and yeah, and then it comes full circle. And I have to ask though, did you study at RADA?
No.
Yeah, that word, it's fun though to do that looking in on yourself performing. Do you find that as performers?
Oh, yeah, massively. It was really, because it almost feels like you then got 2 characters.
Yeah.
You've got the character of Joe and then the character of the actor playing Joe. And we played around with the backstory of Joe and Sam, but also the backstory of our 2 actor characters, who we decided had worked together in the past and maybe had a relationship, and then it had gone really badly wrong. So that was the backstory of them.
So the actors are not Phoebe and Kieran?
No.
It was actor Joe and Sam.
Actor Joe and Sam, yeah.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
I'm much nicer than that in real life.
Yeah, me too.
Very good.
Just briefly, also
yes,
just to return to
Karen.
the new scenes bit.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
I mean, I think James had already been having some ideas. So the market scene was a newer before January, but then I was really struggling with the Joe's Lost scene. You know, he seems so sort of grounded and down to earth, and then he has this massive meltdown.
Mhm.
Where has that come from? And I felt, you know, just absolutely overjoyed with these new scenes. You get more of a journey of their relationship, where you see them. Okay, it's ridiculous scene with the baby, absolutely brilliant, but you see them living together. You know, you see a little bit more of the journey, because before I think it just went from the market to Hurley Knowles. So they're going, oh, wow, how did it go so really badly wrong?
Yeah.
So I think as a piece, it just felt so much stronger having this.
Yeah,
new
it's
scenes.
it seems a very believable journey for this relationship, and I like both the characters so much, but you can see how they could bump up against each other and their general, you know, issues in life. I think. Yes, also in the back.
Yes, thank you, and thanks, James. It's really good to hear about climate and people talking and angsting about that. It felt really timely. So I'm just, you know, you made a reference to Glasgow, which is only, you know, it's only 6 months ago, but you referenced that, and you know, this week it's a rebellion as well. So how did you get that timeliness? I mean, were you writing it in December, or I can't quite how you?
Yeah, so
we knew about.
that's a really good question. But when the Glasgow summit line, I knew the summit was coming, and it was originally, will our hopes be raised by the Glasgow summit? And then, of course, it passed, so I just put it in the past. But and Putin was there before the invasion, and I didn't change that line. No, I just wrote about what I'm worried about, I guess, and what I think my daughters will worry about. So
It's so astonishingly on cue, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. Yeah, so well done.
Well,
It does
when I
capture
first
the mood.
read it, and I was thinking, you know, well, people aren't really talking about ISIS or Putin, and then all of a sudden rehearsals. Well, couldn't really get more time.
Exactly.
But,
There was another hand. Did we already cover your question? Here, yeah.
Yeah, hi, a couple of things. James, thank you so much. Really enjoyed that. First of all, when you come to write the lady's part as opposed to the gentleman's part, so it's real old-fashioned language, how do you do that? And how do you write her part?
Okay, let
And Fisher write his part. What is it that makes you be able to do both? I mean, I wanted to ask the actors if they felt actually that it sounded like they would talk, but the writer wanted to talk.
I'm just going to repeat that question. So it is, how can a male playwright write so convincingly from both a male perspective and a female perspective?
No, that's not what I said. I said a playwright. I didn't say male.
Okay.
Thank you.
This playwright, how can you write so authentically from both genders? Yeah? What do you think, James?
I mean, the honest answer is that because I've written quite a few plays, I don't really think about it. I just think about them as characters and people, and I don't kind of fixate on gender at all, because I think that might be the wrong way to approach it. So I obviously met a lot of women over the years. So right.
Congratulations.
The way you're thinking. No, it's just something that would be authentic, really. I mean, but I didn't struggle or get anxious about writing a female part, because writers just get used to portraying both genders, I think, and
So supplementary, did either of the actors come back and say, I don't think that person would talk like that?
Well, let's ask the actors. Actors, did you think any particular line was inappropriate for your gender or your character?
No, and I think when we first did a read through of the script, James was quite keen. James and Kat were both quite keen to say, is there anything that's not quite working for you or not quite fitting for you? And we could have a discussion about that. But from my perspective, I was, I thought everything was pretty bang on.
Yeah, me too.
So we didn't come back and say, maybe not this or this.
But also, so James is quite open as a writer that I didn't feel I needed to make any tweaks or cuts before rehearsal started, because I wanted to see what they did with it, and kept saying, if I want you to work and try to make this moment work. If it's just sticking and not, and we return to it and go, actually, it's just the story we're telling that isn't. I don't think we ended up doing that. Might have tweaked like 2 words or something.
Yeah, very little.
Yeah.
But James was open to that, but I thought I wanted to wait and see what we could make work, and if it was awkward, because I wasn't hearing it right with their journey.
Very good, very good. Okay, other hands? Audience, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Yes? I'll come back to you in the back.
When you were doing the first bit each half, where you said you had a previous relationship, or you pretended to, that came through. That was really interesting. Did you two come up with that idea, or was that the guys on the left?
I think that was Kat, really.
Kat,
yeah.
It was working so well, these sort of like bitchy actors, but I just went, well, actually, you guys need to know who you are and why you're there, and that awkwardness of you have to work with somebody quite closely that you had a failed relationship with. So you're both kind of not very happy. But so we just started playing with it, just had a lot of fun. And it brought
went on.
Yeah.
I'm now waiting for that little bit at the start of each of the
Nice,
scenes.
yeah.
I had no idea at the start, but what are they doing? Okay, whatever. And now and it was like a play within a play type thing.
That's great.
It was quite a lot of fun, that extra business, wasn't it?
And that's how we actually feel about each other as well.
Yeah.
We really can't stand each other,
Did you know each other before this production?
No.
No.
Are you in a relationship now?
No.
Give us time. There was another, yes, here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, there's obviously a lot of very funny lines in it. James, what's your favourite line?
That's like asking someone to choose their favourite child.
I mean, actually, my favourite line is very mundane, and it just kind of, it's one of those ones that it's natural to say, and it fitted. It's when she says, and we'll talk about. And God, I've forgotten that. And they'll talk about what we talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. And they'll talk about what we talk about.
Yeah, and they'll talk, because it's got the sort of internal line. But I don't know. I mean, it's probably not a special line, but it felt very satisfying.
And the same question to.
Wait! I want to ask the question. What about you? Did you have a favourite line?
I quite liked it, and I can't remember the exact line, but it was after. I was going to say Phoebe, but I don't know well. But Phoebe was talking about the baby being sick on her or whatever. It was that.
Oh yeah, sick down your tits.
That was the one. That was very funny.
I liked talking, because I am newly single, and I get this for dating. Talking annihilation seems that's tonic for the soul. I'm like, yeah, let's have some serious conversations. That's maybe not annihilation, but that's pretty to the point. What about you guys? Any favourite lines?
All of them.
Yeah.
What's yours?
I quite like. It's kind of 2 lines. It's not cheating, but it's like the wine tasting one. It's actually my own line, and I now can't remember it. The one that's like, right, I'm looking at the glass straight on to get a better sense of the colour, so it's definitely red. I just quite like that.
That's one. You said there were 2.
Oh, but then, so that is 2 lines.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I really like when I forget my lines and I get to say line
Line.
instead. Because as an actor, you never want to be doing that. So to have the opportunity to say it is a bit fun.
But just you guys there struggling to remember the lines as you're sat there. This is something I always want to ask actors, because you obviously, in performance, they're just there. But I've seen this a lot when actors outside of the performance can't remember their own lines. Is that?
Yeah. You need a run up to it, right?
Yeah.
And that even happens in rehearsal sometimes, where you might work a section, and then Kat will say stop, and then give you some direction, and we'll go back to the beginning. And she says, "Oh, go from this line," and we're both standing there going, "Who says that?" Or like, "What is that? I don't know." And actually, I think the most difficult part that I found of learning the lines was those introduction bits, the bits that are like scene 1, in which this happens, this happens, this happens, because it comes out of nowhere. It's just information. It's not response to something. Whereas when you're responding to someone else, especially if it lands on a rhyme, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Is it any harder in a minimalist production like this, because you have almost no props? Does that make it harder or easier sometimes to lose your way?
The hardest thing for me in terms of losing my way is the fact that we just don't go off stage, like barely at all, and so you don't even have a chance to like, you know, do your scene, go off stage and be in the wings and be a bit like, okay, next scene, what am I doing? You're literally just there all the time, and we'll finish a scene and I probably should be saying this. You finish a scene and you go, where do I go next? And then you've got to do it and go to the next day.
We had a lot of comedy in rehearsal with 4 weeks later. It's 1 week later. Because we did actually go through the timeline that this relationship is only over 3 months.
Is it only?
Yeah. So had all of her angst over commitment, and then they move in. They all happened incredibly intensely and quickly.
Yeah.
But all of that 1 week later, 2 weeks later, the same day. I mean, I do love the same day bits, because that's like, oh, you met and then you ended up in bed, and then, oh, nothing's happening, and then you went jogging, and then they're back in bed. You know? Just sort of chart how these things can happen. But yeah, it's only over the course of 3 months, but those are so hard to remember, which, is this 2 weeks or 1 week?
And also, you don't want to mess one up that then messes the other actor up, right? Because if you're used to hearing a rhyme, and then you know that your line rhymes with that, and then they say the line that doesn't rhyme, you're like, wait, what?
That could be very cool. Yeah.
But Phoebe never does that.
No. You, on the other hand. With other hands? Okay. So the burning question then is, why Woking?
Oh God. Well, I would love to say that I travelled around the country searching different towns, researching this in great detail in order to find the right place, which of course didn't happen. I was looking for a rhyme for joking, and woking came up, and then I started to think, oh, maybe I could set the whole thing. So I started looking at Woking and found it had an art gallery, and just the kind of vibe I got from reading about it, that it was, you know, not a very glamorous place, permanent construction going on, and, you know, the Jam wrote a song in which basically I hated it. And I just thought, why can't I set a play about two normal people in a normal place that people don't necessarily know?
But again, and I was just reading something in the paper today. It is very spot on in terms of millennials fleeing London. It's too expensive going to places like
Yeah.
Woking. So that seemed again very true and topical and timely.
So my further admission is that when I wrote the play, I'd never been to Woking, and then I went with my wife Philippa on her birthday, and we decided to go.
Philippa, you lucky woman.
Actually, she wanted to go. But anyway, we moving swiftly on. She phoned the cafe just to check it was open and do we need to reserve a table. And when she was on the phone, she said, "Oh, my husband's just written a play, but part of it's set in your cafe." And the woman she was speaking to is called Mary, and she's their events manager, and she was very interested to hear about this play. And it sort of went from there. So we had a rehearsed reading, and Mary told Marigold Plunkett, who's the artist who produced the image, and Marigold hadn't been consulted either, and the Ingram Foundation owns the collection, was quite curious about why I'd suddenly written this picture in, because we wanted to use it in the reading, and luckily they all said yes, and Marigold came along, and we had the actual picture for the rehearsed reading and the high quality sort of image to use in the production.
Have they been to see the play?
Yeah, Marigold was here on the first performance.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I think Woking comes across very well, actually. So did you guys have fun filming the sequences in Woking?
That was the first time I'd been to Woking. But I genuinely was expecting sort of a pokey little suburban arts centre, and then you've got this amazing gallery, which I can't remember the name, but it's
The Lightbox.
No, I meant the architect, like it's won awards for the architecture.
And had you guys been to Woking before?
I had been to the Boots in Woking very briefly once, and the only thing I remembered about it was that I don't remember what it is, but something to do with War of the Worlds, just to do with Woking.
Yeah, they land in Woking.
Right, so they've got all these sculptures of War of the Worlds things. That's what I remembered. But it was great.
And there's the Prince Andrew connection, of course.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pizza Express.
Yes! Did you go to the Pizza Express?
No.
Yeah, got a photo outside, obviously. But fortunately, he's never been there either. So.
But surely you must now perform this in Woking. There are theatres in Woking, so.
Yeah, well, that would be great.
In the art gallery, surely.
In the art gallery,
Yeah.
Well, that's where we did the rehearsed reading in November.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I'm going to give the audience one last chance to ask a final burning question. Anyone? Okay. So then Tyler, yes.
Did you check the menu to make sure that those two sandwich options were on there?
They were when I wrote the play, but I think it might have changed since.
I think though as well, they told us when we were filming that the cafe had been redone, I think it was under different management or a different chef or something.
So they now do rice. You'll be.
And they don't do a brie and onion chutney.
No.
That was
Okay, I have two final questions then. Do Joe and Sam make it? What do you think? Kieran?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think they do. I think the only issue in their relationship was that she needed to find what she wanted to do. That was the only thing that was keeping them apart in some way, and I think she's found that. So I think they do. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they do.
Because we talked about it a fair bit in rehearsal, that this connection, in spite of all the bumps and the protestations, they really do connect. So in that phone call scene, she's trying to say, okay, it was lovely, but not interested. But they have such fun having these big, deep chats and debates, and there's a lot of common ground, I think.
Oh, no. And what does
Yeah,
the writer think?
I'm going to say they stay together.
Yeah. And a sequel, maybe?
With the baby.
Who knows?
But then, and so the follow-on from that is, I thought that was really lovely. Joe's journey, not just in a relationship, but in finding meaning in her life, which is true for this millennial generation, but I think for all of us, we're all looking for purpose and meaning, aren't we? So, somewhat frivolous thing, then that doesn't sound frivolous at all. But what's your advice for the audience, for people watching? What gives meaning to your life?
Gosh. Easy one to finish with.
Art or theatre or...
I think something that I realised over the last few years is that I was trying to grow as a person by doing things that were difficult, anything that was difficult at all. And I actually realised that the way to grow, I think, is to do the difficult thing that you want to do. So don't just go and run a marathon, or don't just go on a big trip, but so for me it's being an actor, right? I was kind of doing all these really challenging things to try and make myself better, and then I realised actually what I wanted to do was be an actor, and that was the difficult thing that I was avoiding. So I think pursue the difficult thing that's the difficult thing you should do and want to do.
I like that.
That's Phoebe.
I can't. For me, it is theatre. So in that speech, when I'm talking about writing, I'm thinking about the first time when I saw a theatre show and I thought, oh my god, this is just magic, and this is just everything that I want. And that feeling that I had, me as Phoebe, of wow, is what I'm trying to bring to that speech that she has when she sees it and realises she wants to be a writer. And I think it's really lucky that I've had that feeling and that Jo has that feeling, because I don't know if everyone has that feeling. So, it's quite a special thing.
And even more special after the past 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah, massively.
Absolutely. Kat?
Well, yes, I would agree on the theatre aspect, but I think Kieran and I were talking about this the other day, that all the different kinds of jobs I've done, I'm very drawn to. It's about the camaraderie, it's about connection. So very sort of tribal feeling of when you feel like you're in it together. And that's part of the joy of theatre, is you're creating something together. So
beautiful, beautiful. James?
Well, really my philosophy is summarised in 2 lines, I think, that Kieran speaks about not looking for meaning in the world around you. But do you want to say the lines? Because that...
Yeah, okay. We shouldn't look for meaning in the world around us, as more likely meaning comes to us through what we do, as long as we're passionate, you see?
Which is a summary of existentialism, I would say. And so I've definitely stopped looking for meaning in the whole world, and it's about what we do, I think.
That's a good place to end, isn't it? Wow, that's brilliant. Okay, so thank you. Audience, don't clap yet, audience. Audience, you have been here for a very meaningful discussion, I hope you agree, and a meaningful play. And now you are the ambassadors for this show. So this Oliver and Stavros production is here at the Hen Chickens until the 23rd of April. So please, once we give them a big clap, will you go out and tell everyone, book to come again, tweet, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, on social media. Will you do that? Everyone's nodding. And for those of you who have camera phones, great. So once we give a big clap to everybody, we're gonna budge up and get a group shot, and I want everybody to get their phones out and take photos and share that wherever, and grab flyers. Yes? Good. Okay, so join me please in thanking Kieran and Phoebe and Katherine and James. And then